I want to mention two people who might get lost in the mix, who might get forgotten because they aren't big names. Well, I already know one has. I'm gonna start with the kid first. I've said in at least 10 of my past 30 videos that I've made that if Oscar De La Hoya stays away from the demons, he's going to have the best roster in boxing in the next 2 to 4 years. Hands down. Trust me, Golden Boy will be running things with their prospects. He's done a great job with his signees. Well, they'll be doing it with one less prospect, as undefeated super bantamweight prospect Cesar Diaz, who was 7-0 with 6 knockouts, was killed when he lost control of his vehicle on Friday night. It was a one-car accident, and he was 20 years old. As an amateur, he had 104 wins and 11 losses. He was good enough to beat Shakur Stevenson in the amateurs, which pretty much tells you all you need to know about the kid. So I wish his loved ones the best, and boxing lost a good one. Kid had a very bright future in front of him. So the other person I want to talk about, I just want to reminisce a little bit about, is he was the last undisputed champion prior to Terrence Crawford. He was the former undisputed world cruiserweight champion, and his name was O'Neal Bell. And O'Neal died 2 years ago, Saturday. O'Neal was my guy. He used to be O'Neal, Give Him Hell, Bell, and then he became O'Neal Supernova Bell. And I kicked it with O'Neal once, and he seemed to think it was more than once, but to my recollection, it was once. Some years back, he was supposed to fight in Washington, D.C. on a card, and so we were hanging outside beforehand, and eventually O'Neal never fought because the card got canceled. It was kind of weird. It was kind of funny. I saw all the boxers outside, and it was at a nightclub, DC Star nightclub, and I saw like a lot of the boxers outside, and then the people started to show up, fans, and so everybody's just kind of hanging outside, and I'm wondering what's going on. So I guess because I was dressed up, they thought that I was with the promotion, so they let me in. They wouldn't let people in, not even the fighters. I'm like, what's going on? So they let me in, and I'll just say this. When you get to 30 minutes after the door is supposed to open and they're still inside setting up the ring, you know it's not going to be a good night. Um, that's all I'll say. So we were, so when we were outside, O'Neal, he kept staring at me. Just, and then he kind of talked to whoever, and then he kept staring at me again. And stared at me and stared at me. And I'm like, what's this guy looking at? So eventually he walked over. He shook my hand. And he kept saying he thought he knew me from somewhere. And he was in a great fight against a guy named John Mark MORMECK. A lot of people call him Gene because it's Jen. John Mark MORMECK. And he kept saying, I know you. And I'm like, the only place you know me from is when I was sitting in my living room cheering as you became the undisputed champion. And maybe my voice or my face carried through that television set and you saw me. But I was rooting for him when he fought MORMECK. And he, of course, he didn't buy that. He kept shaking his head. He was like, nah, man, I know you from somewhere. Now, usually when somebody tells you that a third time, you kind of looking over your shoulder thinking you about to get sucker punched or they got mistaken identity. They got you confused with somebody. But he was friendly. And we continued small talk. And my instincts at that point, usually when I small talk with a boxer, is to start asking some questions. Just things that I might be wondering about. So, I'll leave the fight below. The first fight between O'Neal Bell and Jean-Marc MORMECK, or Jean MORMECK. MORMECK was a tank. I mean, he was mowing everybody down. And so they fought to unify. You see, when Don King was around, fights got made. And this was one of them. You might not have liked how the fights wound up, but they got made because they boxed back then. Guys attempted to be great. Not so much these days. Too much ducking, too many politics. You already know the routine. So you won't hear many people talk about the fight, but this is how they fought back then. It was a 10-round war. So anyway, during that afternoon in DC, I had O'Neal Bell at my disposal. And I had about 10 questions I wanted to ask him, but I didn't. Partially because just the confusion of what's going on, how come they're not letting us in, and the fighters getting a little restless, and the people wondering what was happening. I'm not even going to talk about how that situation ended. It was weird, but I had questions. I figured I'd see him again, and I got his number, and I never made that call. Never got a chance to chop it up with him. And as time went on, I never followed up with my questions. And so now I'll never get that chance. So if you bump into a guy at a fight, or just in general, and you have a question that you really want the answer to, don't hesitate. If you can get it in, no matter how weird the question may seem, no matter how you anticipate the reaction of the guy, ask the question. I'll never forget that he spent the entire time there just trying to figure out where he knew me from. And I wish we would have talked about it. And unfortunately, we won't. So O'Neal was a good dude. Good dude. So pray for the families of O'Neal Bell and Cesar Diaz. Let's talk about the fights Saturday night. I'm going to start with Sully Barrera. All right, Sullivan Barrera got down in an entertaining slug match with Felix Valera. Good fight, man. I mean, both guys hit the canvas in the first round. I think Valera got the best of it, as his knockdown of Barrera was a lot harder than the one Barrera scored on him at the end of the round. This bout had head clashes, knockdowns, low blows, point deductions, I mean, you name it. But in the end, Sully Barrera won a wide decision, partially due to the multiple point deductions given to Valera. So Sully won by scores of 98-88, 97-90, and 97-89. Look, Sullivan Barrera should get a title shot. I mean, he's worked hard. He's gone through the appropriate channels. He's up there in age, and he deserves his shot. Not because of his age, but it's when you deserve it and you're at a certain age that you need to work on getting it and being active. He's going to be a tough out for whoever he fights. And since he left Abel Sanchez, who's a fantastic trainer, since he's left Abel for a new trainer, he's thrived. I mean, you got to give it up. Sometimes good plus good doesn't equal good or great, what have you. I mean, look at like George Clooney, for example. George Clooney, great actor. George Clooney, great actor. Batman, the Batman movies, that's a great franchise. So you bring in George Clooney, great actor, to the Batman movie, great franchise, and what do you get? Average movie. That's not saying anything bad about Clooney, and that's not saying anything bad about the Batman franchise. It just didn't work. So, Barrera and Sanchez, I don't think it's that they were average together. It just didn't work. And the trainer that Barrera has now, it's better. So, hats off to him. But at his age, he needs to stay active as he has been, or active enough, because what you don't want them to do is try to freeze you out like they're doing Gennady Golovkin. I mean, this guy's going to be 36, 37, and he wanted an interim fight with Billy Joke Saunders to become undisputed, to be the latest undisputed champion. And so Team Canelo, Team Golden Boy, they're like, well, you can't do that if you want to fight Saul Canelo Alvarez in May. So we're looking at 8 months for an old man who likes to be active. So they're putting him on the shelf, hoping that that'll be the difference. And so Barrera doesn't want the same thing to happen. He wants to get back in there, get his title shot, and his chance for glory. So we'll see how that plays. All right, let's talk about the Jason Sosa versus Yuriorkis Gamboa fight. guess Kathy Duva might have owed Oscar De La Hoya a favor in this one, I tell you. Jason Sosa's my dude. He's from Camden, New Jersey. Good fighter, hard worker, not scared to step in there with anyone. He's been in there with Nicholas Walters when people were afraid. I'm not talking about. I'm talking about like Nicholas Walters, like when he was that guy, and he got a draw with Walters. He got in there with Vasily Lomachenko when nobody else wanted to. I mean, and you can name who you want on that list. And so, this is a fight where a prime Yuriorkis Gamboa may have had a style that, and I'm talking about a prime Yuriorkis Gamboa, a style that the Sosa's handlers may have been leery or wary about, but Sosa would have fought the kid in his prime too. But they sign on. Sosa was going to fight someone else, and kids who don't have the backing that some of these so-called superstars have, who are out here today, these champion, so-called, I'll call them title holders. It's like his opponent dropped out, and then Gamboa stepped in, and so now you have a name on your resume, and you have a guy who, I'll say, there's nothing to gain and everything to lose in fighting Yuriorkis Gamboa at this point. So I thought Jason Sosa won the fight. I mean, I thought it was a win for him. So I want to get into the judges. So the first judge scored it 94-94. Okay, that judge's name was Robin Taylor. Remember that name, Robin Taylor. The card suggests had the points not been taken away from Yuriorkis Gamboa, it suggests that Gamboa wins a 96-94 card. So Gamboa had 2-point deductions. Or let's say, okay, you're saying Gamboa won 6 out of 10 rounds. This was a 10-round fight. Then he lost points, once from a knockdown and once for holding, to make it even. Okay. Right. The second judge. Second judge had, his card was 95-92, which means either this judge scored a 10-10 round somewhere, or in one of the rounds Gamboa got penalized, he believed Gamboa was winning that round, so he scored it 9-8 instead of 10-8. That's a bad card. This judge's name was John McKay, and it's MC capital K-A-I-E. Remember that name. So you got Robin Taylor, John McKay. Then you had the third judge, 96-92 for Gamboa. That judge's name is Don Trella. The same Don Trella that not only scored Golovkin versus Alvarez 114-114, but the same Don Trella who gave Alvarez the 7th round in that fight. Remember that name again. Don Trella. We've asked you in another video to remember that name. Well, here he is again. Coming to your area, causing mass hysteria. Don Trella. Don Trella should be suspended for this card. His card, and he's one of the guys licensed to do the fights in multiple jurisdictions. Remember, Golovkin Alvarez was in Vegas. Sosa Gamboa is in New York. So keep a lookout for Don Trella once again, coming to your area, causing mass hysteria. Don Trella. That's Trella. He should be suspended. Same with Adelaide Byrd, who recently popped up on a Mayweather card, and she turned in another awful card on that Mayweather card. This is the sport we're in. It's as corrupt as it's ever been, and get used to it, because nobody is going to do anything about it. They didn't do it 20 years ago. They won't do it 2 weeks from now, and they'll continue not to do it. The fans don't care enough to make noise. Real noise. I'm not talking about going on Facebook or Twitter or the gram or wherever and making noise. I'm talking about putting some heat on these boxing commissions and going to these state senators and whoever else. The fans don't care enough to make noise. The media is too scared to make noise. I don't want to lose my credential. And this is about outcomes of fights. This is about boxer ratings or rankings. This is about drug testing. This is about hand wrapping issues and just people just knowing what the rules are who work a fight. If you could see some of the stuff that goes on behind the scenes. People putting tape and then gauze and then tape and then gauze when you hand wrap, and it makes your hands like bricks. This is how we found out about Felix Tito Trinidad punching as hard as he did. You can't go tape, gauze, tape, gauze. You got to go gauze, tape, gauze, tape. But you got people from commissions that the inspectors who sit in there and then they're like, well, let me read a magazine while this is being done, or let me step out of the room, I'm hungry, while someone's hands are getting wrapped. And if a representative from and the teams are at fault too, because if representatives from other teams aren't there watching how the hands are wrapped, then they're just as liable for damage done to their fighters. So it's things that seem as simple as hand wraps, and then people knowing the rules, and then commission people not being where they're supposed to be. So if they don't care about things like that, you think they're going to care about scorecards and outcomes of fights? Ain't going to happen. And people wonder why this is a secondary sport at this point. So, welcome back, Adelaide Byrd. Welcome back, Don Trella. Keep doing what you're doing. Let's move on to the main event. I think that think that Sergey Kovalev looked awesome, and he knocked Slava Shabranskyy down twice in the first round. The first was a looping right hand. It only glanced him, but it looks like it hit the equilibrium button there. And Shabranskyy just never had major punch resistance, in my opinion. He couldn't avoid the right hands versus Barrera. He couldn't avoid the right hands versus the kid from Philly. And he couldn't avoid the right hands last night against Kovalev. So, in the second round, there was a lead right hand that kind of buzzed Slava. And then in the final minute, he got dropped again. And then Slava got up, and he got hit by a mean left that put him on skates, and his equilibrium was gone at that point. And so referee Harvey Dock may have waited a little bit longer than necessary to stop it, but it was very impressive second round stoppage. Look, I know I'll make people mad at what I'm about to say. However, I don't have 15,000 followers, and I probably don't hit the radar, so it doesn't matter. But Andre Ward left boxing at the right time. He might have some of you fooled, but not me. The 175-pound division or light heavyweight, to be exact, is on fire. Just like Floyd Mayweather retired when he would have been forced finally to fight a Margarito or Paul Williams when they were killers. Ward did the same thing. He would have been forced to defend his title against guys with names like Beterbiev or Bivol or Vosdick or even Abadu Jack. He opted not to. What he wanted to do was try to unify with Adonis Stevenson, who, to me, out of most of those names, would have been the weakest link as far as who you either went after or who you defended against. And he saw the writing on the wall and said, all right, you know, these boys are out here punching, and they got that blood in them. And let me go ahead and step aside. So once the fight with Stevenson fell through, he got out of the game. But Andre Ward will be back when the smoke clears. They all do. He'll be back. Look for, and between you and I, look for Floyd Mayweather Jr. to do another fight or two also. We mentioned it 2 years ago in a video that Floyd Mayweather Jr. is going to fight 52 times. That was going to be the magic number. I'm not sure what video it was, but I can still see him doing at least 51. So, listen, boxing is a brown paper bag business. I'll catch you on the next one.